Hello, I'm Dave and this is Logan, out once again for a walk in the New Forest. Thanks for joining us. Now today we're at a place called Cadman's Pool. It's located southwest of Fritham in the New Forest, sort of northwest of Lyndhurst and west of Cadman. And we're going to be walking a roughly 4.5 mile circular-ish route, starting at Cadman's Pool. We'll then head west following the course of the Dockens Water, and then head north past Ragged Boys Hill and into the Sloden Inclosure. We'll then head west looking for the Elephant Oak, more about that later, and then on to Hasley Hill before initially heading south and then east alongside the Holly Hatch Inclosure, finishing back at our starting point at Cadman's Pool. Now folks, you'll have noticed I'm not alone today. I'm delighted to say I'm going to be joined on the walk by a well-known New Forest artist, Peter Frost. Hello Peter.
Hello there, David.
So the plan today is for me to film a normal countryside walk, and I mentioned the Elephant Oak earlier on. We're going to see if we can find it, and then Peter is going to paint it. So we should have some fun along the way. So we'll see how it goes. Now the weather today, I think we're going to be okay. The sun is nice. Out. Yeah. We're filming in the middle of winter. It's about 8 or 9 degrees, so that's why we're well wrapped up. But hopefully you'll find it an enjoying video. I say we'll get a chance to have a chat with Peter as we go along and find a little bit about him, not only as an artist, but also his time as a New Forest verderer. Right, let's kick on. Okay, well, I've parked my car at the Forestry England car park at Cadman's Pool, which is a free car park. Let me tell you a bit about the pool itself, which you can see behind me. It's located on the edge of the Ocknell Plain and was created in the 1960s by Arthur Cadman, Deputy Surveyor of the New Forest between 1959 and 1968. He created quite a few ponds around the forest, mainly for wildlife and birds. Now, he died in Scotland in 2001, but there was a memorial service for him here, under a tree by the pond, and I was reading that the vicar conducted the service on horseback, and indeed I believe Peter was in the congregation. Well, this first part of the walk we've been heading downhill towards the Dockens Water. Obviously it's a little bit muddy in places, but not impassable. It's a lovely time of year to be out into the forest because I say all the leaves of the deciduous trees have gone, and it opens up everything, so you get to see all the different shapes and the moss growing on the sides there. Beautiful. Well, Peter's just spotted some faces in this holly tree here. That'd make a nice painting, wouldn't it?
It would. It's Hayward Sumner, the artist, often did little studies of hollies like this.
Yes.
Because they've been nibbled and they've been pollarded over the years.
So much character, yeah.
But this one's lovely because it's not actually nibbled so much as just knobbly.
Well, here we are, we've made it to this gorgeous little stream, Dockens Water. In fact, Logan and I have done a walk where we walked the whole length of it. The source is up the other side of Fritham, over in the east, and then it flows into the River Avon to the west. Well, while I've picked this spot to have a little chat with Peter, you probably can't quite see behind, but there's a sort of little hill called Ragged Boys Hill.
Ragged Boys
Bottom. Ragged Boys Bottom, lovely.
Hill,
yeah.
Yes.
And you've actually painted that.
That's right, yes.
little book here, which Peter and his friend Barry Peckham produced, called New Forest Art, the Past and the Present. Now, Barry, I know, sadly no longer with us. He died quite recently. But tell us a bit about this book, because you used to go out and sort of...
That's right. Well, we had the idea. We were up actually at Pitt's Wood, and we were saying, wonder. We knew there was bluebells there, and there's still bluebells there. They're fairly thin on the ground, but Golden Short, Frederick Golden Short, had done a painting with lots of bluebells in it.
And this was back in the 19th century?
This was about 100 years ago.
100 years
about
ago.
1920, we think,
Okay.
roughly. And we looked at the landscape behind and the slope of the hills, and there was some water in it, and we thought this could be the spot. And it's quite interesting because in the 60s the Forestry Commission cut down a lot of Pitt's Wood, and they diverted the stream into a straight ditch alongside it. But as times change and they're trying to restore the damage they did in the past, they put the stream back where it was. And you can actually see that it was in the same scene. A lot of the trees are not there, but some of them are.
So you basically painted the same scene that he had painted all those years ago?
Yes, we tried to get into the exactly same spot. I mean, some of the paintings he did were easy because they're like this one. There was a church spire.
I'll show you some in a second, but there are loads of paintings, and there were quite a few. There was, say, Hayward Sumner was another painter that you looked at. So saw the original painting and then painted the same scene 100 years later, and that's what happened here. I'll put a photograph up on screen. So here's Ragged Boys Hill. So there's the original painting, and there was the painting that Peter did fairly recently. I just stopped to look at this pollarded holly here. Look at the marks where you can see where the ponies have been chewing away at the bark on the side there. Well, I've come to a lovely spot here by the Dockens Water with the Sloden Inclosure up on my left. I think I called it Sloden earlier on, but Sloden it is. Anyway, this is a super spot. I thought I'd ask Peter a few questions. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
He's ready.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I know you started your working life in the printing trade, and you're now retired, but I believe you're a self-taught artist. So what gave you the inspiration to start to paint?
Well, obviously the New Forest, but I never did any art at school.
Really?
No, none at all. And it wasn't until my late 30s that I had some friends who were professional artists, and we used to go walking in the forest. And eventually they encouraged me. They made their living from painting, which is quite an achievement in many ways to do. Anyway, they invited me along on various week trips, you know, up in Yorkshire. I bought some paints, and I never looked back. So yes, and then it was always a very good excuse to go out with your friends and paint.
Absolutely.
You know, and possibly end up in a pub at the end of the day.
Yes,
you know, which was always a good incentive.
We can identify with that last bit. Yeah. Now, I believe in your time, as well as spending 9 years as a member of the New Forest National Park Authority, and you had 9 years as a New Forest verderer. So, I mean, a lot of the viewers won't know what a New Forest verderer does. Perhaps you can tell us a little bit about the role that a verderer does, and also what the verderer's court does in the overall management of the New Forest.
Well, very briefly, there's been a verderer's court since the time of William the Conqueror, when he set up the Nova Foresta, the New Forest. But every royal forest, and there was lots of them all over England had a court of verderers.
Yeah.
But the New Forest Court of Verderers was reconstituted in 1877, and then again it was changed a little bit in 1949.
Yeah.
At the time that national parks were being made.
Okay.
They thought the New Forest at that time didn't need to be a national park because there was a body that was managing the open forest.
Yeah.
The verderers' powers are on places like this, the open forest, not the enclosures.
Okay.
The enclosures are still the prerogative of Forestry England.
Yeah.
But fortunately, the New Forest Act of 1877 says the only thing you can do in enclosures is plant trees. You can't do anything else. So if you want to do something else, you have to throw it open,
Right.
and then it becomes under the verderers' powers.
And
so,
there were some 12 verderers in total?
yeah, there's 10 verderers.
Oh, 10.
Yeah,
Yeah.
5 are elected by the commoners
Yeah.
through an electoral roll, and the other 5 are appointed.
Okay.
And there's what we call the King's Verderer, who is the chairman. That's appointed by the government.
Yeah.
The local planning authority appoint one. When I was a verderer, I was appointed by Natural England.
Okay.
Natural England has one, and the Forestry Commission, Forestry England, they appoint one, and DEFRA appoint one, and that's how they're appointed.
Oh, brilliant. Okay. Now, I was going to ask what other roles you've had that actually has involved the protection and conservation of the New Forest, and are you still active in any of those roles now?
Well, the first thing I really got involved in was the Council for the Protection of Rural England.
Okay.
And I was a member of the local New Forest branch, and then I became chairman of that because there was nobody else. It's very thin, it's not difficult to become a chairman of something like that when there's very few people prepared to give their time up.
Yes.
Then I became a vice chairman of the New Forest Association, and then finally chairman. I was chairman for about 17 years.
Gosh.
Now that was it's quite a big job, that was.
Yeah.
The New Forest Association, known today as well as the Friends of the New Forest.
Yeah.
And it's the oldest conservation, it's the second oldest conservation organisation in the world.
Gosh.
It was started in 1867.
And you're still involved with those?
They did make me vice president. Okay. So I still keep in touch with them and go to the meetings, but I don't have to do any work like I used to have to do, because there was a lot of work. And we used to have to go to lots of meetings and things. So I'm retired so I can do a bit more painting rather than conservation work.
And last question, and this is an easy one. What would you say are the major sort of present challenges affecting the overall environment in the New Forest at the moment?
Well, the first one has got to be climate change, without a doubt. I don't think people realise just how it is changing. The scientists can see these small changes, but looking into the future, it could be quite serious if we don't do something about it.
Yeah.
And from the forest point of view, the key thing is to get the unnatural areas back into a natural state, because a natural landscape can manage climate change much better. In other words, you keep the place wet, you don't let it dry out in dry times, you get rid of conifer plantations, which they're not natural plants anyway.
Are you basically saying we should leave nature to get on with it?
Yes, I think nature, really, we should trust in nature.
Yeah.
The New Forest can be very robust given a chance.
Yeah.
And the other problem we have, and we don't know really how to solve it, is the pressure of more people. New Forest is between two big cities. They're both getting bigger. There's thousands of houses proposed, and as much as we love dogs, there is always going to be that percentage of people who are not good at walking their dogs on the forest and don't understand the ground nesting birds and things like that. And it would be terrible to start losing species, because we have signed up to a lot of international things to protect things, and things like curlew, they're only just hanging on. But how we manage it, I don't know.
That's the question.
Yes. Yeah.
Lovely. Okay, well, it's getting a bit chilly now. We need to kick on.
We need
Hope
to
you
walk,
enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this is about as far west as we're going along this valley. There's a gorgeous white cottage in front of me. There's an old forest keeper's cottage. You've got the Holly Hatch Inclosure on my left. I think it's called Holly Hatch Cottage, actually. That's the Sloden Inclosure, which is our next destination. And the elephant oak is up there on the left. And we need to cross over the Dockens Water over this little bridge. Well, this is a lovely little track that's taking us up to the enclosure. There's lots of history and quite a few earthworks that relate to different periods of time in this enclosure. Well, there was a very old enclosure called Old Sloden, but I think it's now absorbed into one huge area, and it's just called Sloden Inclosure. But there's evidence of Roman pottery kilns. There's an Iron Age enclosure up here, a coppice enclosure that dated well before 1572. I think there was a pig pound, and then a wood enclosure from 1768. Just as we're coming into the enclosure, I don't know if you can make out, there's a little bank and ditch in front of me here, and this was one of the earthworks that I was talking about earlier. This may well have been one of the medieval ones. I'll need to look at my notes later on when I get home, but you can just about make it out. Wow, you look at this yew tree and the dead straight pattern in the trunk there. Now, this enclosure used to be one of the jewels of the New Forest, and at one time there were more yew trees here than in any other part of the New Forest, but in the 1960s many started dying due to an unknown cause. Now look at this one here. This has seen better days, and you'd think it's on its last legs, but if you look closely you'll see there's one solitary branch sticking out to the side, so who knows, it may well regenerate. Peter's just been explaining to me these are always good areas to have a poke around when you've got fallen trees, because sometimes brings up little bits of Roman pottery, as I mentioned before. A lot of pottery kilns around here in Roman times.
And I have actually found a Neolithic scraper once.
Really?
Yes, in one of these.
Wow.
Which goes back, you know, that's way before Bronze Age.
Yes.
You know, it was just almost like that there.
Yeah.
But it was. And I picked it up like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that obviously isn't,
No.
but because that's not being worked.
No.
But it was about that size.
Yeah. Love it.
That isn't one, but when you find one, you know it's man-made.
Yeah.
It's just got that feel and the little chips around the edge, and it always has a little flat called the anvil point, where they break off the flint.
Well, a New Forest walk wouldn't be a New Forest walk without some New Forest ponies. And this lot here, of course, got their shaggy winter coats on, so they're nice and cosy. Well, folks, this is, I think it's going to be the highlight of the walk. This is the elephant oak. Isn't that fantastic? The shape of that trunk, although I think it looks more like a rhinoceros, but that's me. It's been pollarded. It's got a girth of only 3.94 metres perhaps at a metre high, but it's got to be 150 to 300 years old. Now, the reason that I got interested in it is because it was entered in the Tree of the Year competition run by the Woodland Trust. There were 12 trees in the competition. 11 were chosen by a panel of experts and one nominated by public, well, via social media, which was this one. And it's already taking place, the competition now, and then the elephant oak didn't win, but the winner is then the UK's entry in the following year's European Tree of the Year competition. Okay, well, Peter's now setting up his equipment with the tree in front of us. It's been a bit like a TARDIS in reverse, all this stuff that's come out of your bag. So talk us through some of the stuff you've got here.
This is my own making. I've got several. This is the smallest one for a longish walk. I didn't want to carry anything too big.
No.
The French call them pochard boxes. Pochard,
okay.
as in the duck almost.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it's just with a French accent.
Yeah.
And it means that you can carry your paints, you can close it all up and then close it down, and that your paint can still be there, and you don't have to wipe it up. You can do that when you get home.
Yeah.
And some of the boxes you can, it carries the wet canvas as well.
So the paints you're using,
these are oil paints.
They're all oils.
Yes,
okay.
Yeah.
So the whole painting's going to be oil, and literally you start off with oil.
Go straight into it.
Yeah.
I've done a sketch of the tree.
Yeah.
Because I have been here several times before.
Yes.
And it saves. I can simplify it in the drawing.
Yeah.
Because it's a very complex scene.
Yeah.
Hundreds and thousands of branches and leaves, and but the winter is a very good time to paint, particularly this fine oak, because the leaves are away. You can actually see the skeleton of the tree, you know, and this is quite an amazing shaped tree. I mean, how it grows like that, I just don't know.
Right. Well, we're going to let Peter get on. Logan and I got a little bit of exploring, and we'll come back and see how he's getting on. Well, while Peter's busy painting away, we're just going to head back into the enclosure to see if we can find the remains of a medieval hunting lodge. Here we are. This is what I was looking for. This, hopefully you can see this as a sort of a bank, almost like a rectangular shape, and it's the remains of a hunting lodge. Now, a modern Ordnance Survey map calls it the Churchyard Royal Hunting Lodge site of, but there was never a church here. This site and others such as Church Place at Denny and Church Place at Ashurst were called that in the mistaken view that they were sites of churches destroyed during the creation of the New Forest by William the Conqueror in 1079. But there were a number of these royal hunting lodges created in the 14th and 15th centuries, 8 or 9, maybe even more, and they were a temporary accommodation for royalty and nobility whilst out hunting, although some experts reckon they might just have been for keepers or forest officials. I tell you, with the sun out, it is a glorious winter's day now. So seeing as we're in the Sloden Inclosure, I thought I'd do a reading from a book by Joan Begbie. She wrote Walking in the New Forest. I think she wrote it in 1934 when she was 36. She died in 1984. And she wrote about walks that she did in the New Forest with her 2 dogs, Bill and Bundy. And this is a section she did about the enclosure here. The track turns to grass under the trees and runs straight ahead and close to the bank which once carried the fence of potter-haunted Sloden Inclosure. To Mr. Bundy I owe my first kiln discovery, or rather the discovery of where a kiln has been. I went with him to a rabbit hole he was interested in and saw, mixed in the black earth, a lot of broken grey earthenware. Though no antiquity, I confess, I was really thrilled by our find and picked up a sherd or 2, rather awed by the thought that the last human hand to touch it had fallen into dust more than 1,000 years ago. I see Logan's off exploring as well. Okay, let me just creep up on Peter and see how he's getting on. Oh, wow. Look at this. You know, it never ceases to amaze me how an artist can produce something from a blank canvas in what's literally a matter of minutes. Okay, well, we'll let him carry on and we'll catch up with him later. Well, while Peter's finishing off his painting, we've made our way to the western edge of the Sloden Inclosure, and we can see in the far distance the Hasley Inclosure and also Hallixall Hill down on the right. And of course from this spot is where Peter did his painting, at the same spot that Frederick Golden Short did his all those years ago. Well, as I'm standing here right on the edge of the Sloden Inclosure looking out to the Hasley Inclosure, forgive me if I do another reading from Jones' book. I think the best place to see for the first time the moor between Hasley and the Slodens is from the brow of old Sloden's Hill. In the shade of his yews on a hot summer's day, they lie in the sun so blissfully, flowing away with a gentle dip and swell, sometimes hiding, sometimes revealing the white track that leads to Hasley, shimmering and dreamy in the distance. And all around them are woods dim in the heat haze, and far away behind Hasley sleep the opalescent hills of Dorset. Well, I think it was a bit warmer when she wrote those words than it is today. Let's see how Peter's getting on. Well, here we are back with Peter, and he's finished everything that he's going to do today. So, Peter, let's see what you've done.
Well, it's a pretty basic little sketch, oil sketch, which I will use to produce a slightly bigger painting. Because it's such a good subject, but it's a complicated subject, and it will take, you know, a week or two to get going, or maybe longer.
So what we're going to do, although we're nearly at the end of our video walk, it's not the end of the video, because I'm going to pay a visit to Peter in his studio in a few weeks' time, and we'll have a look at the finished painting. Well, here we are back at the car park at Cadman's pool. Peter and I are off for a swift pint at the Royal Oak at Fritham, but we'll see you in the video very shortly. Well, folks, here we are 3 weeks later in Peter's studio with the finished article, which is just by me here. Peter, you pleased with it?
Yeah, I am pleased with it. I've tried to capture the 3D effect of the big branches coming out, and I popped a pony in just for give it some atmosphere.
Yeah. Well, we did see a pony out on the wall.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
No, I think it's absolutely terrific.
I worked on it for about 3 weeks every day doing something. You have to wait for bits to dry so that you can put glazes on it and bring out the detail.
I have such admiration for guys like this that can produce something like that. In fact, I love coming to Peter's studio. I've been sort of 2 or 3 times now, and it's like a little Aladdin's cave in here. Let me give you a little tour. And one of the great things that I always do is I have a look at the picture first and then see if I can recognise where it is before looking at the information down below. So this is a part of the Bewley River, and we passed close by there when we did our walk along the entire course of the Bewley River. Now this painting up here is fascinating. It's called Park Pale Beach, and Logan and I have done 2 walks there. The first time was when the beach was there. Peter did a painting of it shortly afterwards, but sadly not long after that it fell over in a storm, and it is no longer. And we saw that the second time we did our second walk. But what's great is that it is there now as history within Peter's painting. Oh, I love this one. This is called Water Hole Below Sloden. And in fact, where we were 3 weeks ago by the Elephant Oak was just up round about there. And this is another one I love. It's called Pony at Ditch End Brook. And I know this area really well because I often take Fiver and Logan out for their walk very close here. And there's Pitt's Wood in the far distance. Now, I should point out that Peter has his own YouTube channel. What's it called, Peter, and what can we see on it?
Well, I call it Peter Frost Ramblings, and I've made quite a few, but they're only short 5-minute videos, and it's mainly about fishing or the beauty of being by a river rather than catching fish. And then I do some paintings on painting out in the open, and I always like to do a few painting, visiting old trees in the forest. Most of my videos revolve around the New Forest or its coast.
I'll tell you, it's a terrific channel, so do check it out. Thank you, Peter, for allowing us to do this collaboration video for the walk 3 weeks ago, and also for inviting us into your studio today.
Well, it's been a pleasure.
Yep, and
we've had the most well-behaved dog I've ever been with.
He's been good today. So all that remains for me now to say is, well, from Peter and from Logan and myself, thanks for watching, and cheerio.
Goodbye.